The Floodplain Risk Management Study and Floodplain Risk Management Plan are very closely linked indeed, and as per the flood study, they are normally carried out by a specialist consultant who has appropriate floodplain risk management and planning experience. Grant funding assistance is sought as per the flood study, and engaging a suitable consultant also follows the same process. The purpose of a floodplain risk management study is to identify, assess, and compare various risk management options and consider opportunities for environmental enhancement. That is, to provide a strategic assessment of the impacts of risk management options for existing, future, and continuing flood risk on flood behaviour, flood hazard, and the social, economic, ecological, and cultural costs and benefits. The Floodplain Risk Management Study is a multidisciplinary process that is lengthy and detailed. It balances a number of differing factors to generate recommendations for an appropriate mix of management measures to deal with different types of flood risk. These include flood behaviour, danger and damage, the community costs, future land use, a comprehensive range of flood risk management measures, the environmental needs of the waterway and floodplain areas, environmental and cultural impacts. The management study aims to identify all relevant issues, quantify them, and weigh them appropriately into an overall management plan by which the community as a whole is better off.
Generally, the process involves bringing together all the data we have available and reviewing the previous flood study. We then generally initiate hydraulic and hazard risk category assessment and mapping, and a flood damages assessment if they were not completed as part of the flood study. Next is a strategic assessment of new development areas and a review of planning controls and emergency management, such as Council's flood management policy, flood planning levels, flood warning systems. The next task is to assess a range of measures that can be used to mitigate the effects of flooding on existing communities and future development. There are three ways of managing flood risk to reduce flood losses: property modification, response modification, and flood modification. By modifying existing properties and/or imposing controls on property and infrastructure development, flood risk can be minimised. This approach includes measures such as land use planning, development controls, voluntary purchase, voluntary house raising, floodproofing of buildings or flood access improvement. It is important to note that modification of existing properties can minimise risk to property, but does not minimise risk to life.
It is also important to note that the voluntary purchase of houses should only be used as a last resort, as it is a high-cost option and should be recommended when there is no other option to remove a high-hazard flood risk to property. The purchase of several houses can be placed on a list in order of priority and purchased when funds become available. Until the properties are purchased, it is important that the state emergency services are made aware of their location and flood hazard. Purchase of houses and property may also be required when obtaining areas of land to construct flood mitigation works, such as channel widening, retarding basins and levee banks. These properties can be acquired under just terms compensation procedures.
Response modification can be thought of as modifying the response of the population at risk to better cope with a flood event. Examples include flood warning and effective warning time, protection or evacuation of an area, relief of evacuees, recovery of the area after the flood, and flood education. Flood modification refers to modifying the behaviour of the flood itself and includes the construction of flood mitigation dams, retarding basins, levees, bypass floodways, channel modifications and floodgates, amongst others. Every catchment is different. However, usually around 10 options need to be tested under existing and fully developed conditions, and a review of the effectiveness of the strategies undertaken for economical, social, environmental and cultural heritage impacts. A benefit cost analysis should also be undertaken for a range of options. The cumulative impacts from all planned development, including any impacts from increased urbanisation, need to be considered and addressed.
As per the flood study, the consultant needs to give regular updates to the committee. The study involves high levels of skill in engineering, planning, the sciences, economics and emergency management, and requires significant effort from the Floodplain Risk Management Committee for a successful result. As mentioned, the Floodplain Risk Management Plan is integrally linked with a floodplain risk management study and is usually completed by the same consultant who's engaged to complete both studies within a certain time frame. The Floodplain Risk Management Plan is the cornerstone of the floodplain risk management process and eliminates any ad hoc decision making and means that the most beneficial management options are proposed.
The Floodplain Risk Management Plan is the formalisation of an effective floodplain risk management process. It is based on a comprehensive and detailed evaluation of all factors that affect and are affected by the use of flood-prone land and provides the long-term path for the future development of the community. The plan consists of a coordinated mix of measures that address existing, future and continuing risks. It describes and discusses the various issues, problems, special features and values of the area, along with specific management measures. It includes information describing how flood risk in specific areas is to be managed to achieve objectives in both written and diagrammatic form, and with appropriate flood mapping.
It is essential that the management plan is fully integrated with the local flood plan, the SES, Council's existing corporate, business and strategic planning instruments, and meets Council's obligations under the Local Government Act. Also, it is important to establish a program for management plan implementation and a mechanism for funding the management plan, including priorities, staging, funding, responsibilities, constraints, and monitoring. An implementation program should be included in the plan, as well as cost estimates for the options provided. Once again, community consultation and the support of the community is an integral part of the plan formulation and continues throughout the plan's development. Once a draft plan is completed, it must be advertised and placed on public exhibition together with a floodplain risk management study. A community meeting should once again be held to better explain the plan and work through any problems or misunderstanding. Any comments and suggestions as a result of the public exhibition need to be reviewed and any resultant work completed. These comments are included in the appendices of the documents. All things going well, the draft can be finalised and can go to the Floodplain Risk Management Committee to be recommended for adoption by Council.
Councillors, the plan has been carefully prepared and overseen by the Flood Risk Management Committee. Can I now commend the Floodplain Risk Management Study and the plan be adopted? I have a motion. Seconder. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors.
Whilst the adoption of the plan is a big moment for the community and the Floodplain Risk Management Committee, there is still much work to be done, and it is important to note that a management plan is never truly finished. Social and economic circumstances change, and flooding behaviour may be substantially altered by future measures adopted in other areas of the catchment.